Hi everyone, and welcome back to Writing Tips with Writing Support from the GSEP. My name is Julie Stigmeyer. Today I want to talk to you about scholarly or academic writing and some of the features of this type of writing. Scholarly writing can be characterized by clear and logical reasoning, effective organization, sufficient evidence and citation, and appropriate style. All of these elements work together to communicate to your readers in a scholarly or academic way. This first section, clear and logical reasoning, is kind of the hardest to define, so I broke it down into 4 parts. Thinking clearly, following a process, asking questions, and distinguishing between fact, opinion, and belief. I make the contention that clear writing comes from clear thinking, and clear thinking comes from a process of using reasoning to show how your evidence or your research supports your claims. If your thinking is fuzzy, or you haven't fully thought through your outline or topic, organized your ideas, or discovered your focus, you may have trouble writing your paper, which can lead to paralysis, where you just don't know what to do, or you procrastinate. And that means that your deadline is coming up and you have to put something together and maybe it's not your best work. To solve this problem, the key is to start your project early and follow these steps, which include gathering evidence, evaluating and analyzing it, considering the alternatives, making a judgment, and reaching a well-reasoned conclusion. All of this is part of using inquiry, observation, and reasoning in order to make claims and communicate in a scholarly way. So this is kind of the process that you would follow as you are writing a scholarly paper. And Begley suggests that throughout this process, the clear thinker asks questions, especially when considering research. Is the information accurate? Does it come from a reliable source? Is it sufficient in depth and breadth? Are there alternative explanations? Is there enough known to reach a conclusion? So think about those questions in light of this example. Let's say you were trying a new beauty product, some sort of a moisturizer, okay? And you read on that product that 100% of consumers who used it reported noticeable results. So that's the quote you read on the container. Well, what questions would you as a scholar ask about that statement? Here are some possibilities. This statement comes from a survey of consumers, but how was the survey conducted? How many people were involved in the survey? What standards did the research follow? What were the variables? What was the research design? Were the participants from a random sample? How are noticeable results defined? Does that mean fewer wrinkles, lightening of dark spots, more moisture in the skin? In the fine print of this particular beauty product was a disclaimer. 5 out of 5 participants were surveyed and agreed that they found noticeable results. Well, clearly you can see this is not a study with randomized participants, dependent and independent variables, and appropriate sampling, which a well-designed study would include. So the point of this is to tell you that the goal of scholarly writing is to not only have a good focus and clear message from your paper, but to report accurate, reliable, and credible evidence to support a claim that you're trying to make. The last section in this first part of this presentation is distinguishing between fact, opinion, and belief. A fact is verifiable. We can determine whether it is true by researching the evidence. A fact is beyond argument if one can assume that the measuring devices or records or memories are correct. An opinion is a judgment based on facts. an honest attempt to draw a reasonable conclusion from factual evidence. This is how writers form arguments. An opinion is potentially changeable depending on how the evidence is interpreted. By themselves, opinions have little power to convince. Last, just in defining these, unlike an opinion, a belief is a conviction based on cultural or personal faith, morality, or values. Let me give you some examples. And I'd like you to think about which is which. The best treatment for depression is cognitive behavioral therapy. Capital punishment is legalized murder. 𝐂𝐡𝐚𝐩𝐭𝐞𝐫𝐬 was a Swiss psychologist whose work identified stages of human development. So which one is a fact, which one is an opinion, and which is a belief? Well, these are my suggestions, that number one is an opinion. It may be that it is a fact that CBT is a treatment for depression. But the thing that makes this an opinion is that it says it's the best treatment. So that could be an argument you make in a paper, that the best treatment for depression is CBT. And then what you would do is support that opinion with verifiable evidence. Number two is a belief. Capital punishment is legalized murder. So it's the wording in this that makes it a belief as opposed to an opinion or a fact. And the third one, 𝐂𝐡𝐚𝐩𝐭𝐞𝐫𝐬 was a Swiss psychologist. That's a fact. We could verify this by looking it up and finding the information from another source. So that's the basics of clear and logical reasoning. The main goal there is to try to make sure that we have a very clear way to think through our project, that we are using credible research, and that we're thinking through that research and using it to make sure that we are basing our arguments on reliable, credible information. So now let's get down to the nitty-gritty, more practical concerns. In terms of effective organization, this is really going to help you to create a paper that communicates clearly. So make sure you have an appropriate topic. Scholarly writing is characterized by focused writing about a topic that is well defined, and it's not too broad nor too narrow for the scope of the work. And this is a really difficult process to work through to determine if the topic is appropriate. So if you have a 10-page paper to write, you can't choose a topic that's too broad, but you also can't choose a topic that's too narrow, because you have to have enough information to be able to fill your pages with enough argument and claims, but you also need to make sure that it's not so broad that you could never cover it in 10 pages. I wanted to give you an example from a student who agreed to let me use this as her example. She was working on a literature review, and she worked through this process for probably a couple of weeks, trying to make sure her topic was not too broad nor too narrow. She began with, she wanted to study dyslexia and reading difficulties and the effects of intervention for children. But you can see in this first topic that it was so broad that she probably would have had to spend quite a bit of time talking about what dyslexia is, then identifying other reading difficulties, and then looking at various interventions, and then seeing what the effects of those interventions would be. And all of this would focus only on children. So that was way too much information for her to be able to write I think it was like a 10 or 12-page paper. So then she narrowed it, and she looked at only the effects of phonics-based intervention for children with dyslexia. So this was only one intervention, which was phonics-based, a type of intervention, and its effects. And she felt like this was a little bit too narrow because what happened was she couldn't find enough research then on the phonics-based intervention. She also, just as a side note, had to identify what age children she was talking about. So I think her focus was on elementary school children. She found that at the end of her process, she got to temporal training for auditory processing and how that affects children with dyslexia. And this is beyond my scope of knowledge because I don't know much about dyslexia, but you can see how much more narrow this topic was. She still felt like this topic was a little bit too narrow, she admitted to me in the end, because she struggled to find enough articles. But this is what it's this kind of balancing act, going back and forth between topics to make sure you have just the right focus. After you've chosen your topic, I would encourage you to create a clear claim. And you may remember from high school or college, teachers calling this a thesis statement. We also might call it an overview statement. So this usually is placed toward the end of your introduction that helps to summarize your entire paper and provide a roadmap for your big ideas. Consider breaking your paper down into major sections as well, and then refer to those in your statement. So let me give you an example. This was a first draft of a thesis statement about education. Unfortunately, many barriers to education persist within developing countries, preventing individuals from gaining access to education. The good things about this is that we have about this statement are several. First, there is the clear statement of barriers to education. Where those barriers persist are in developing countries, and we kind of have a sense of the overall topic. This student revised her overview statement to say, 3 of the most significant barriers to education in developing countries include poverty, child labor issues, and civil unrest. The reason why I call this stronger is because now we have a very clear division, not only of her statement itself and understanding what those barriers are, but we also have a kind of a roadmap for the way her paper would be broken down. And it would focus on poverty. The first section would focus on poverty, the second on child labor issues, and the third on civil unrest. Here's another example. This literature review focuses on the effects of gratitude interventions, including how gratitude increases happiness, changes our happiness set point, and decreases depressive symptoms. So this is clearly for a literature review, and you can see the topic that this is about gratitude interventions. And then the 3 effects that this writer is going to focus on. So I would expect as the reader that this would be divided into 3 main parts: how gratitude increases happiness, changes our happiness set point, and decreases depressive symptoms. The next idea, so it's very important to make a clear claim. The next idea is to focus on, in the body or the main part of your paper, to focus on only one idea per paragraph. Limit each paragraph to just one topic. And if you feel like you don't have enough to say, you can follow this model and it will help you to fully develop one idea per paragraph. This is called the meal plan, and it was proposed or made into an acronym by the Thompson Writing Center at Duke University. And this follows, it's kind of a funny play on, right, college room and board. So a meal plan breaks down to M is the main idea. So within a body paragraph of your paper, you would have maybe 5 to 8 sentences. And your first sentence would be a topic sentence that gives the claim or central purpose to the paragraph. Second, You could provide evidence. This means examples, quotations, or paraphrases that add credibility to your claim. Then you would further analyze or describe the evidence, interpreting it for the reader and telling why it's important. And last, you would link back to the larger claim. This sentence usually concludes your paragraph with a summary or concluding statement. Let me give you an example of what I mean by this. This is a paragraph before using the meal plan structure. Gwen was referred to me by her pastor. I realized that seeking therapy is a big step for her, and I don't want to force myself on her. African American women are socialized to put the needs of others before their own and feel guilt when engaging in activities to promote self-development. Listening to Gwen's story, I remember that African American women have an increased risk of depression due to racism, sexism, and poverty. If I were to analyze this paragraph, here's how I would describe it. We have two pieces of evidence. Here's one, which is a quotation, and this one is a paraphrase. And the evidence is very strong in this paragraph because it does underscore the author's ideas that therapy is something that might be difficult for Gwen to participate in. Let me just show you how this might look after using the meal plan. Due to cultural barriers, African Americans may hesitate in seeking therapy. A reason why this may be difficult for Gwen is summed up in Carrington. African American women are socialized to put the needs of others before their own and feel guilt when engaging in activities to promote self-development. This uncovers some of the barriers Black women may face when considering therapy. In addition, while listening to Gwen's story, I remember that African American women have an increased risk of depression due to racism, sexism, and poverty. Thus, it is important to recognize Gwen's cultural considerations when developing a treatment plan. Affirming Gwen's strength in coming to therapy will help her to continue to overcome barriers in finding treatment. These reasons are important for me to not only be aware of, but to mitigate in order to encourage Gwen to continue seeking therapy. So here, what's been done is the main idea is more general. The first example, it was Gwen's pastor referred her to therapy. That was an interesting detail, but maybe was not fully explored. So instead, a more general statement could be used. Due to cultural barriers, African Americans may hesitate in seeking therapy. Then we have evidence, and that is this quote. And then a piece of analysis. This uncovers some of the barriers Black women may face. So it's just putting in your own words what that quote said. Then I have two pieces of evidence here, and I kind of put them back to back. In addition, while listening to Gwen's story, and then this was the information in the paraphrase, and then this was actually another piece of evidence from another place in the paper. And then the A is analysis. And finally, a concluding sentence kind of linking back to the main idea. So those are some things to think about for creating effective organization within your paper. The next section is on sufficient evidence. So we talked about this a bit in the first section, that extensive evidence from experts or recognized authorities in the field is very important. And it's important to use up-to-date research. And I hear some professors saying your research can't go back further than 10 years, say to 2010 or 2011. This would also include facts, examples, statistics, precedents, etc. So here are a few examples of sentences with or without evidence. I think that childhood obesity needs to be prevented because it is bad and causes health problems. That's a fairly simplistic approach, which needs improvement. Here's a better example. Childhood obesity causes multiple health problems. It can be linked to health problems and deaths in adults. So here we have a paraphrase in the second sentence. The first sentence could maybe serve as a main idea, but it's still pretty vague. And here you'll see it's strongly supported. Childhood obesity must be prevented because it is linked to later health problems and deaths in adults. George has explained that there has never been a disease so devastating. And then you can see I've added some analysis here, another quotation, more quotations, and then a link. So here's how I broke this down. Here's your main idea, the first piece of evidence, analysis, more evidence, and a L, a link sentence, back to the main idea. So make sure that when you are using your evidence that it's very clearly cited and supported. The last section to discuss is appropriate style. Style refers to the choices at the sentence and word level that you make as a writer, which can refer to the tone you establish and the words you choose. Your tone in scholarly writing must be objective, direct, and straightforward. And a way to describe it in the APA manual is imagine a specific reader that you intend to reach and write in a way that will inform and persuade that individual. And then another element is to use formal or professional vocabulary. Instead of write up, you could say he reported that instead of he wrote up a report about something. Avoid value-laden or emotional language. Instead of Gerard 2019 completely overlooked something, say Gerard did not address. And then that'll be more, it's less emotional, less value-laden. Well, here are some of the references I used in creating this presentation, and here are ways to get in touch. So this was a longer video than I normally create, but I wanted to fully explain that process of scholarly writing. Please get in touch for more help or resources, and happy writing.